Right, for more on this, joined now by South African Federation of Trade Unions General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi and the South African Jewish Report editor Howard Sackstein. Gentlemen, good to have you and thank you very much for coming on. Depending on what numbers you're looking at, the 413 people reported to have been killed, 78 of them children, 41 women, 2,300 injured on the Gaza Strip, 700 or so sites that were hit. If you look at that, Vavi, that tells you that the escalation has already begun, or in fact, it's in full effect. So a call for de-escalation maybe would be it, instead of not escalating.
Unfortunately, this has been the situation, since the Palestinians began to lose their land way back in 1948. And this is a major escalation of that violence. And again, in the aftermath of 1967, the bloody war of occupation of the Palestinian land by the racist army of Israel, again another 73 major escalation. And there's been killings since then. And as you know, this has led to droves and droves of Palestinians to leave their land, and this has led to Israeli being able to settle settlers in all of those lands where the Palestinian people have fled into the neighboring countries to become refugees. As you know, the biggest population of refugees in the world today is made up of people who are running from the Israeli war to take over their land in Palestine. Saftu insist that there can be no peace until there is justice. There can be no de-escalation of violence on both sides until Israel is pressurized by the world. Firstly, to move out of the occupied territories of Palestine, and secondly, to sit back all of the land that it has occupied from Palestine back to the Palestinians. And only when that happens do we stand a little bit of a chance to then say, let's talk about the two-state solution, a peaceful land for Israel, but also an unoccupied land of Palestine, going back to the 1948-1967 wars that forced them to run away from those countries. So that we insist that until that happens, the world must continue to stand firm in condemnation of the occupation, must continue to demand that Israel must go out of the occupied territories of the Palestine, must restore the 1948-1967 borders, and must then talk peace and with its neighbors so that there can be a peaceful coexistence of both nations. But there can be no such as peaceful coexistence when the other country occupies the other country by force and force its citizens out of the country. Now look, in response to this Hamas attack, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the apartheid Israel state, have made a call that all Palestinians who are residing in Gaza must now leave their homes, so that he can flatten the whole space. But what he doesn't say is that he has been bulldozing houses to the ground, he has been confiscating their cattle, he has been stopping water flows into the territories of Palestine, he has been confiscating cars of the teachers so that they may not reach their schools, and he has been imposing an apartheid wall between the countries, including further taking land that doesn't belong to him. So that's what he doesn't say.
Let's get Howard to respond to what you're raising here. The Palestinian envoy to the United Nations just like what Zwelinzima Vavi is saying there. He's saying all those who believe in the UN Charter and international law must not lose the fight of the bigger picture. He says we need to stand up for the vision enshrined in the resolution of the Security Council and take the necessary measures to ensure compliance with their provisions. Is Israel going to, at this particular point, even consider those provisions?
Well, let's actually rather talk about the facts. Let's actually talk about what's happened over the last few days. 2,000 rockets in one go were fired by Hamas out of the Palestinian Gaza territory, completely controlled by Hamas, not a single Israeli in that area. 2,000 rockets were fired at Israeli cities. The total now fired at Israeli cities were 5,000 rockets. More than 1,000 Palestinian gunmen crossed the border. They attacked towns, they attacked kibbutzim, they attacked a music festival, they slaughtered more than 700 people, innocent civilians, people at a music festival, hundreds of them were mowed down, people in their homes were shot, people at bus stations were shot. Somewhere between 100 and 200 people have been taken hostage back into Gaza, are being held against their will by Hamas. And let's face it, those are the facts of exactly what has been happening here. None of this propaganda that Vavi is talking about, because let's get down to the real facts. In 1948, Israel accepted a state, the Palestinians refused it. They instead attacked Israel, and they lost territories. And it is in fact the area that Vavi is talking about that was invaded by Jordan, not by Israel. In 1967, they attacked again. In 1973, they attacked again. Israel is the victim here. And if people like Vavi don't have a human decency to be able to say 700 Jews were slaughtered yesterday, and I condemn it unequivocally, if he doesn't have the basic decency to say that, he is beneath human himself. He has no empathy, he has no sympathy, he is part of the problem. The truth is that yesterday, more Jews died in a single day than have died since the Holocaust. And they died at the hands of Islamic fundamentalist terrorists who attacked and invaded Israel. And those are the facts that we're dealing with today. The whole civilized world has come out and condemned this grotesque atrocity. This will result in putting back the peace process a generation, maybe 2 generations. Justice will be served. 700 Jews are dead in a single day. And there is no calling at this point in time for ceasefires or moving on. Justice will be served. The people of Israel have been massacred. And that's what we're dealing with, not this nonsense propaganda that has been sprouting tonight.
Dr. Vavi, 700 Jews killed in a single day. Justice will be served.
Well, he knows that the real propaganda is what is spewing on television right now. The truth of the matter is that the people of Palestine had their land occupied by an armed army. In 1948, which led to the war. Again, in 1967, that led to the brutal killings of thousands and thousands of Palestinians, forcing them to the neighboring countries as refugees. And this has been happening almost every second week, every second day, which is hardly reported.
He can't even condemn the slaughter of 700 people. It's beneath him. He doesn't have the ability, he doesn't have the empathy, he doesn't have the humanity.
Hold on, gentlemen, we cannot all speak at once. Hold on. We cannot all speak at once. Howard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Palestinians know this type of intolerance that your guest is now spewing on television. These words become bombs, they become killings, they become forceful removal of people from the land of their birth, and they become a real Holocaust and against the people of Palestine. That's what you are now witnessing now. Racist, aggressive intolerance that you will ever imagine in the eyes of the world.
Are you unable to condemn that?
They come again.
Are you unable to condemn? Are you unable to condemn?
There they come again. They are totally intolerant. They are racist. They are justifying occupation of other people's land on the basis that they believe their race is much more superior than the others. They won't listen to reason. They have ignored countless United Nations resolutions calling for an end to the occupation of that land and for peaceful coexistence of the two nations on the basis of the fact that the other nation was occupied and that there is a drive to wipe them out of the face of the earth by an armed force that is backed by imperialism of the United States of America, which arms them to death with the most sophisticated arms you can imagine. That's what has been happening. And I believe me, if those people had their chance here in South Africa, they will drive us to Cape Town and into the sea and take over our land exactly in the same manner that they are taking over the land of the people of Palestine. That's the facts of history, not what he is now emotionally trying to convince us that we can abandon history and reason because he becomes emotional.
Howard?
I think Mr. Vavi maybe have not only his facts wrong, but maybe not the mental capacity to understand what's going on. 700 people were massacred yesterday. He doesn't have the ability to even condemn it. He misstates entire history. He forgets that in 1948 it was Israel that was attacked. He forgets in 1967 it was Israel who was attacked. He forgets in 1973 that Israel was attacked. And he forgets that yesterday 700 Jews were massacred. Hundreds of kids at a music festival were opened fired at and massacred. And you ask him, just condemn it. That's what a normal human would be able to do. That's what an empathetic person would be able to do. But he doesn't have the ability because all he wants to do is sprout nonsense and propaganda. He's trying to reinvent history here. Now he's talking about somehow we're going to drive him into the sea. What is wrong with this man? Has he no grip on reality?
Unfortunately, South Africa was occupied for nearly 400 years with you smiling and clapping hands and benefiting from that occupation of South Africa.
What nonsense are you talking about?
Smiling and clapping hands at the occupation of the land of the people of Palestine. There is no difference between the struggle of the people of South Africa against apartheid colonialism and the struggles of the people
of Palestine. Thank you. As an anti-apartheid activist who's devoted my entire life to fighting for justice in South Africa, I am just completely shocked by your ignorance.
Gentlemen. I'm going to take a break. Let me take a break. Let me take a break. Hold on. Let me take a break. I'll come back.
They do not include the people who justify racism and killing of other people in other people's lands.
A war has now been declared, and Howard, in your view, this war is not going to end in any kind of ceasefire, but it's going to end in justice. What does that justice look like?
Look, that's going to be up to the Israelis to determine. But the first thing they're going to do is to try have the hundreds of hostages that have been taken hostage in Gaza, they're going to try have them released. Now, in fact, they're Thai people who've been taken hostage, they're Nepalese that have been taken hostage, they're children that have been taken from this music festival hostage, and that's going to be the priority to try get these hostages released. But you know, when you start a war like Hamas has done, you must be prepared to finish it. And I believe that Israel, having lost 700 people so far in one day and more than 2,000 injured in that same day, I don't believe that Israel is going to be sitting back and taking this lightly. Yeah. We're not going to be seeing anyone go to a negotiation table anytime soon. They will extract the price that they need to in return for what has happened to them today, and they will go out and they will destroy Hamas. Let's face it, Hamas are a dictatorship. They came into power in 2007. They murdered all their opponents. Their opponents from Fatah, they strung up from street poles. They threw off buildings. They were supposed to have an election, but they haven't had an election since 2005. They are an Islamic military fascist dictatorship that controls the Gaza Strip and are doing Iran's bidding. So if you would ask the question, why are we seeing what's happening at the moment? This is an Iran-backed initiative to try scupper what has become the normalization of relations in the Middle East between Saudi Arabia.
Let's talk a little bit about the prisoners as well. Palestinian Islamic Jihadist chief saying that they are holding captive 30 of Israelis who were abducted in the Gaza Strip when Hamas launched their attack on Israel. How many Palestinians are currently in Israeli jails?
These aren't people in Israeli jails. These are people, civilians, that have gone out and be captured. And let's look at it. There's an 85-year-old woman with Alzheimer's who was taken hostage yesterday. Yeah. There are baby children. In fact, what one of the terrorists did, they shot the father dead, and they took the mother with these two beautiful little red-haired children across the border, these little toddlers, and they're being held hostage. There is no moral equivalence here.
No, I'm saying they are saying those 30 Israelis who are held captive will not be repatriated until over 1,000, in fact thousands of Palestinians who are held in Israeli prisons are released.
Let's see how this ends. But let me tell you, when you take civilians hostage, you will pay a price. And that price will be extracted. There are 700 Israelis who were massacred this weekend. There are another 2,000 who are injured from this weekend. There are hundreds being held hostage. And as this folds up, I think we will see many thousands of people will die over the next few weeks. They've started a war that will have irreparable consequences on the Middle East, and Israel will not stop until Hamas is completely dismantled.
Dr. Vavi, France, Germany, United States, they are all at this particular point coming on board. Who is on the side of the Palestinians? It looks like it's going to be an uneven war.
It's been an uneven war since 1948, 1967, 2014. In fact, 2014 conflict led to the killing of 2,300 Palestinians, the biggest number since the occupation of 1967. In fact, in general, and that's not the propaganda from Saftu, these are the statistics from the United Nations offices. And secondly, in general terms, for every time there are 24 people that will die in that conflict, 23 will be Palestinians. I'm not talking about yesterday, and I'm not going to pick up emotionally the 700. I'm looking at this thing historically in terms of what has been happening there. I'm not mad. I'm not empty-headed. I'm reading here the United Nations report on the conflict between Palestinians who have been occupied by Israeli army, which is an occupier in this particular instance. So we go back to the point that we are making. There will be no peace in Palestine-Israeli conflict until Israel steps back from all of the occupied territories of Palestine. There can be no cessation of hostilities until Israel cedes back all the land that it has taken by force from the people of Palestine. We calling on the South African government to tell the Israeli ambassador here that he has been declared a person non grata, he must go back home. We're calling on South African government to stop all cultural activities with the Israeli apartheid regime so that it can be totally boycotted. We're calling on the United Nations to revive the International Committee on Apartheid so that it can initiate the comprehensive sanctions against that apartheid regime of Israel. And above all, we're calling on the working class inside Israel to stand firm in solidarity with their counterparts in Palestine in the name of genuine peace and solidarity between the poor of those countries that are seeing a war that is not in their interest but being waged in their name.
Howard, a call for boycott on Israel and declare the Israeli ambassador in Pretoria persona non grata and sever diplomatic relations, as it seems, from what the labor union is calling for. What's your reaction?
can I say, it is patent ridiculous. Let's tell one story from yesterday. A Hamas terrorist crossed the border, walked into a kibbutz, went to someone's grandmother, shot her dead in the head, filmed the incident, and posted it to Facebook so everyone could see him murder their grandmother. That's what we're dealing with here. Mr. Vavi is unable to condemn that. He's unable to condemn any of the 700 people who were massacred yesterday. And we have to ask the question, why? The question and the answer is really quite simple. It is the working class in Israel that he speaks about who are massacred this weekend. Yet he cannot speak up for them. He cannot represent them because they were massacred and they were murdered, and he fails to condemn it. He lacks the basic humanity that is required of any human. It's that simple. If you cannot come up and say, I unequivocally condemn the massacre of innocents, then I'm sorry. You have no credibility to talk about Israel. You have no credibility to talk about anything else. You lack the very foundations of humanity.
Let's leave it there. Gentlemen, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. Howard Sackstein, as well as Zwelinzima Vavi. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time there.